The rain had been falling for hours. It turned the streets into long rivers of mud and filthy water. Shadows moved under the dim streetlights. But no one looked at each other. In the alien quarter of the city, life was hard, even on a good day. Tonight, it was worse. Daniel walked quickly. His coat pulled tight against the cold wind. He was delivering spare parts to a repair shop 2 streets over. The rain made his boots heavy, each step splashing in the water. Most people kept their heads down, rushing to get out of the storm. That's when he heard it. A sound soft at first, almost lost in the noise of the rain. It wasn't a cat. It wasn't the wind. It was a cough. Followed by a weak whimper, Daniel slowed, turning his head toward a narrow alley. At first, he saw only darkness. Then, a small shape moved. She was huddled against a broken wall, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her clothes were torn and soaked through. A thin blanket, more holes than fabric, was wrapped around her shoulders. She shivered so hard that even from a distance, he could see it. Daniel stepped closer, water dripping from his coat. The girl lifted her head, and he realized she wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue, its faint glowing lines along her cheeks. Her hair hung in wet strands, hiding most of her face. Her eyes, large and bright, were filled with both fear and exhaustion. "Hey," Daniel said gently, his voice low so he wouldn't startle her. She didn't answer, just pulled the blanket tighter. He could see now that her lips were trembling and her breathing was unsteady. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a small, wrapped loaf of bread. He held it out to her. She didn't move, only stared at it. "It's for you," he said. "You don't have to pay." Still, she hesitated. Her eyes flicked from the bread to his face, searching for some hidden trick. Finally, with slow movements, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his hand, cold, almost icy as she took the bread. She held it for a moment as if deciding whether it was real. Then she took a small bite and her eyes widened. It was warm. Daniel crouched so he wasn't towering over her. "What's your name?" he asked. She shook her head, a drop of rain sliding down her cheek. He noticed her shoes were little more than scraps of fabric, her toes exposed to the cold. He glanced at the street. People were still walking past, pretending she didn't exist. "Do you have anywhere to go?" He tried again. She shook her head once more. Daniel sighed, pulling off his own scarf and wrapping it gently around her neck. She flinched at first, then froze. Her eyes locked on his. "No one helps." "For free," she said finally, her voice hoarse. "I'm not asking for anything," he replied. "Just don't freeze to death out here." For a long moment, they sat in silence, the rain beating down around them. Daniel knew he couldn't stay much longer. The shop was waiting for the delivery, but something about leaving her here felt wrong. He stood, but not before setting another small food packet beside her. "I'll be back this way in an hour," he said, "if you're still here. Maybe we can find somewhere dry." He turned and walked away, the sound of rain filling his ears behind him. The girl clutched the bread and scarf as if they might vanish. She watched him until he disappeared into the wet, crowded street. For the first time in days, she wasn't thinking about how to survive the next hour. She was wondering if he would actually come back. The rain had stopped by the time Daniel finished his delivery. The streets were still wet, puddles reflecting the dim yellow lights above. He walked back the way he came, his mind replaying the image of the girl in the alley. He told himself she might have left, found somewhere warmer. But a part of him knew she would still be there. When he reached the broken wall, he stopped. She was exactly where he had left her, sitting in the same position. The scarf he had given her was pulled up to her chin. The food packet was gone. Only crumbs on the ground remained. Her head lifted when she heard his footsteps. "You came back," she said softly, almost as if she didn't believe it. "I told you I would," Daniel replied, stepping closer. Her eyes darted past him to the street. Then back to his face. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "People will talk. I don't care what they say," Daniel said. "I care that you're out here in the cold." She looked down, her fingers tightening around the scarf. "I can manage," she said, though her voice didn't sound sure. Daniel crouched down so they were eye level. "Look," he said, "I have a workshop a few streets away. It's not fancy, but it's warm." She shook her head quickly. "No, why not?" he asked. She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because no one helps for nothing," she said, "and I can't pay." Daniel's voice softened. "I'm not asking for payment." Kara, her eyes flicked to his, surprised he knew her name. "You told me," he said gently, "before you fell asleep earlier. You were barely awake. But you said it." Kara's cheeks warmed, though the night was still cold. "Don't remember," she admitted. "It's a nice name," Daniel said with a small smile. "Come with me, just for tonight. You'll be safe." She searched his face, looking for a lie. All she saw was patience. Slowly, she nodded. Daniel stood and offered his hand. She stared at it for a moment before placing her icy fingers in his palm. He helped her to her feet. She was lighter than he expected. As if the wind could carry her away, her steps were unsteady, but she didn't pull away from his hold. They walked through the wet streets, past shops closing for the night. Some people stared. A human and an alien woman walking together drew attention here. Kara's shoulders hunched under the weight of their eyes. Daniel noticed and slowed his pace, keeping himself between her and the stairs. "You don't have to be afraid when you're with me," he said quietly. She didn't answer, but her grip on his hand tightened. The workshop was small, tucked between a tailor shop and an old bookstore. Daniel unlocked the door and pushed it open. Warmth rolled out into the cold air, carrying the faint scent of metal and machine oil. Kara stepped inside hesitantly, her eyes scanning the cluttered space. A workbench sat in the corner, tools neatly hung on the wall. A small heater glowed softly near the back. "You can sit here," Daniel said. Pulling out a chair near the heater, she sat slowly, her hands extended toward the warmth. He walked to a shelf and pulled down a folded blanket, draping it over her shoulders. Kara blinked at the simple gesture. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Daniel shrugged. "Because I can, and because I'd want someone to do the same for me if I were in your place." He moved to the small stove in the corner and began heating a pot of soup. The rich smell filled the room, making Kara's stomach tighten with hunger. When he placed the bowl in front of her, she stared at it for a long moment. "Go on," he said. She took a careful sip, then another. Her eyes closed for a second as the warmth spread through her. She hadn't tasted food like this in months. "You can sleep here tonight," Daniel said after a while. "There's a spare cot in the back room." Kara froze, her spoon hovering in the air. "Just tonight?" she asked. "For now," he replied. One step at a time, she gave a small nod, her eyes falling to the soup again. But inside, something strange stirred the faintest spark of hope. That night, after she lay down on the cot with the blanket pulled tight, Kara stared at the ceiling in the dim light. Her body was warm, her stomach full. It felt unreal, and as sleep took her, she wondered, not with fear this time, but with quiet curiosity, what tomorrow in this place might bring. The night in Daniel's workshop was quieter than Kara had expected. She lay on the cot in the back room, the heater humming softly nearby. Outside, the city still moved muffled voices, distant engines, but in here, it was almost peaceful. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, letting its warmth soak into her bones. Her body ached less than it had in days. Daniel had left her with a bottle of water and told her to rest. She could still hear him working at the bench in the next room. Metal clinked against metal, followed by the soft whir of tools, every so often she heard him mutter under his breath, not in annoyance, but in focus. She didn't understand why a human would help her, but his voice. It didn't carry the tone of someone who wanted something in return. Kara closed her eyes, trying to let herself sleep, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time her breathing slowed, memories tried to crawl back in, the shouting, the cold. The way doors closed in her face when she begged for work. The way her children's faces had faded from her memory. She turned on her side. Clutching the blanket tighter, Daniel glanced toward the back room when he heard her shift. He could tell she wasn't asleep. Quietly, he set down his tools and stepped into the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. Kara opened her eyes but didn't sit up. "Just not used to walls around me," she said softly. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "That's supposed to be a good thing." "It is," she admitted. "It just reminds me I'm not where I should be." There was a long pause. "You have family?" he asked. Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she said, "Not anymore." Daniel didn't push. Instead, he walked over to the small cabinet and pulled out a second blanket. "You're safe here," he said as he handed it to her, "at least for tonight." Kara sat up and took the blanket. Her fingers brushed his, warm and steady, and something in her chest tightened. No one had spoken to her like that in years, not since before. Everything changed. She nodded in thanks, and he stepped back toward his workbench. An hour later, the workshop went silent. Daniel had turned off the lights in the main room, leaving only the glow from the heater. Kara finally drifted off, the steady hum wrapping around her like a lullaby for the first time in weeks. Her dreams weren't filled with running. Instead, she saw three small faces smiling, giggling before the image faded into the warmth of sleep. Morning came slowly. Light filtered through the dusty window in the back room. Kara sat up, rubbing her eyes, the smell of something cooking reaching her nose, when she stepped into the main room. Daniel was already moving around the stove. "You eat breakfast?" he asked. She hesitated. "When I can." "Well, today you can," he said, sliding a plate across the table. It was simple: bread, eggs, and a slice of fruit, but it looked almost unreal to her. She sat down, her hands hovering over the plate. "Go ahead," he said with a small smile. She took a bite, her eyes flicking to him as if making sure this wasn't some cruel trick. Daniel just poured himself a cup of coffee and started checking a small machine on the bench. After a few minutes of silence, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" He didn't look up right away. "Because I can," he said, finally. "Because too many people walk past without looking?" Kara frowned slightly. "That's dangerous," she said. "Helping people like me." Daniel shrugged. "Maybe. But it's more dangerous not to." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment. She didn't know what to make of this man. He wasn't like the others, who had either ignored her or tried to take advantage. Something about him felt solid, like the ground under her feet was finally holding still after years of shifting. When she finished eating, she quietly carried her plate to the sink. Daniel glanced over. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she replied. It had been so long since she felt like she could give anything back, even something small. But before she could put the plate down, there was a sharp knock at the door. Daniel's head turned, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Stay here," he said, stepping toward the entrance. Kara froze, her body tense. The knock came again, louder this time. She didn't know who it was, but a chill ran through her. Something told her this morning wouldn't stay peaceful for long. The knock echoed through the small workshop. It wasn't the polite tap of a customer. It was sharp, heavy, like someone who already believed they had the right to enter. Daniel's shoulders stiffened as he walked toward the door. Kara stayed near the table, her hands curling into the edge. "Who is it?" Daniel called out. For a moment, there was no answer. Then a voice replied, deep, rough, and unfriendly. "City Patrol, open up." Daniel's eyes narrowed. City Patrol didn't come here unless they wanted trouble. He turned his head slightly. Toward Kara. Go to the back room, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. Why? She whispered. Just go, Daniel repeated. Something in his tone made her obey without another question. She slipped into the back room, closing the door until only a crack remained. Daniel unlocked the door, but didn't open it wide. A tall, human man in a dark coat stood outside, flanked by two others. All of them wore the patrol's silver badge. The leader looked past Daniel into the shop. We've had reports of an unregistered alien in this sector, he said. Daniel leaned casually on the doorframe. Lot of aliens in this city, he replied. You'll have to be more specific. The patrolman's eyes narrowed. This one's female, early 30s, brown markings on the skin, he said. Daniel shrugged. Haven't seen anyone like that, he said flatly. The man's gaze hardened. You mind if we take a look around? Daniel didn't step aside. I do mind, he said. You got a warrant? The patrolman smirked. You think we need one for unregistered aliens? Daniel didn't blink. I think you're wasting my time, he said. And if you're done wasting it, I've got work to do. For a moment, it looked like the man might push his way inside. But finally, he took a step back. Will? Be watching, he said, his voice low. Do that, Daniel replied. The patrol turned and walked away, their boots splashing through the puddles outside. Daniel closed the door and locked it. His jaw was tight, his hands flexing at his sides. Kara stepped out of the back room slowly. Were they here for me? She asked. Daniel looked at her. Yes, he said honestly. Her breath caught. They'll take me, she said, her voice trembling. Not while you're under my roof. He replied firmly. Kara shook her head. You don't understand, she said. They don't just arrest people like me. They send us back. Back where? Daniel asked. She hesitated, her eyes darkening. To the camps, she said finally. The word hung in the air. Heavy and cold, Daniel's stomach turned. He had heard rumors about those places, work camps, where survival was luck, not law. I won't let that happen, he said quietly. Kara looked at him as if trying to believe it. No one can stop them, she whispered. Daniel took a slow breath. Maybe no one has tried hard enough. He said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. The rest of the morning passed in uneasy silence. Kara stayed close to the back room, her mind running in circles. She couldn't remember the last time someone had stood between her and death. Danger. Part of her wanted to run, to vanish before the patrol came back. But another part, smaller yet stubborn, didn't want to leave this place. Didn't want to leave him. Daniel kept working at his bench, but his eyes often flicked toward the door. Every sound from the street made his muscles tense. By midday, he set his tools down and turned to her. If you're going to stay here, we need to make sure you're safe, he said. Kara frowned. How? He tapped the small device on the table. This, he said, a signal jammer makes it harder for patrol scanners to pick up anything unusual. Kara stepped closer, curiosity in her eyes. You made this? She asked. He nodded. I make a lot of things, he said. Some of them aren't exactly legal, but they help the right people. She studied him for a long moment. Why risk so much for me? She asked. Daniel met her gaze without hesitation. Because you're worth more than the way they see you, he said. Her chest tightened, and she looked away before he could see her eyes glisten. That night, Daniel slept in the main room near the door. Kara lay awake in the back, listening to the faint hum of the jammer. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking only about surviving the next day. She was wondering what it might feel like to actually live, but deep inside, she knew the patrol wouldn't give up so easily. They would be back, and next time, they might not knock. 3 days passed. In that time, Kara began to settle into the small workshop. She helped clean tools, sorted parts, and even fixed a loose hinge on the door. Daniel didn't treat her like a burden. He spoke to her like an equal. And every meal they shared felt like a small act of rebellion against the world outside. But the shadow of the patrol never truly left. Daniel often glanced at the street when a sound caught his ear. Kara noticed how his hand always seemed close. To the jammer switch, the memory of that first knock still lingered in her chest. It was the sound of a trap waiting to close, on the third evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. Daniel was checking the power lines running to the jammer. Kara was sweeping the floor when a familiar heavy knock echoed through the walls. Her blood went cold instantly. Daniel's head snapped toward the door, his eyes hardening. He walked over, keeping his voice steady. "Who is it?" The same deep, rough voice replied, "Patrol, open the door." Kara's hands tightened on the broom handle. Daniel mouthed the words "back room" without sound. She obeyed, slipping away just as the knock came again. Harder this time, Daniel opened the door halfway, blocking the entrance with his body. The leader from before stood there, but this time there were 4 patrol officers instead of 3. 2 stood at the edge of the street, scanning the area. "We're coming in," the leader said flatly. Daniel shook his head. "You still don't have a warrant," he replied. The man stepped forward. "And you still think that matters?" he said. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You want to play this game? Fine," the man continued. "But hiding an unregistered alien is a serious offense. You know the penalty." "I'm not hiding anyone," Daniel said firmly. The leader smirked. "Then you won't mind if we look around?" Daniel didn't move. His heart was steady. But he knew they were pushing harder now. One of the officers tried to step forward, but Daniel shifted. Blocking the door completely, "You take one more step," he said quietly, "and you'll regret it." For a moment, silence filled the air. The leader's eyes locked with Daniel's, testing him. Finally, he stepped back with a cold smile. "Have it your way," he said. "But we'll be back, and next time we won't be polite." They turned and walked away, their boots thudding against the pavement. Daniel watched them until they were gone, then shut the door and locked it. Kara stepped out of the back room, her eyes wide. "They know I'm here," she said, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't lie. "Yeah," he said, "they'll keep trying." She swallowed hard. "Then I should leave," she said. "No." Daniel replied instantly. "They'll find you faster out there, at least here. I can protect you." Kara's lips pressed together. "You can't protect me." "Forever," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Maybe not forever," he said. "But long enough to figure something out." That night, Daniel pulled out a map and laid it across the workbench. Kara sat across from him, watching as he marked a route with a pencil. "There's an old supply tunnel under the east sector," he explained. "Most people don't know it still connects to the riverport if we need to get you out." That's the way Kara studied the line he'd drawn. "Why are you planning this now?" she asked. "Because I don't wait until the fire's already burning," he said simply. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet hum of the jammer filled the room. Finally, Kara said softly, "No one has ever done this for me before." Daniel looked at her. "Then they were fools," he said. Her chest tightened, and she looked down quickly, hiding the way her hands shook. The following morning, Kara tried to act as if nothing had changed. She worked alongside Daniel, handing him tools, cleaning parts, and even learning how to solder small wires. But every noise outside made her tense. Daniel noticed, but he didn't call attention to it. Instead, he kept teaching her, letting her focus on something other than fear. By the end of the day, she had fixed a small device on her own. Daniel tested it, nodded, and said, "Not bad." Kara smiled faintly. That moment of quiet pride was broken by the sound of movement outside. Not a knock this time, the sound of boots surrounding the building. Daniel's expression shifted instantly. "They're here again," he said under his breath. Kara's pulse spiked. "What do we do?" She whispered. He reached for a hidden lever under the workbench and pulled it. A small panel in the floor clicked open, revealing a narrow space beneath. "Get in," he said. Kara hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll stall them," he said. "Go now." Reluctantly, she climbed down into the dark space. Daniel closed the panel, just as another heavy knock shook the door. This time, they weren't going to leave without a fight. The pounding on the door grew louder. It wasn't a warning knock this time. It was a demand. Daniel stood in the middle of the workshop. Taking a steady breath, his eyes flicked to the spot where Kara hid beneath the floor. He could hear her faint breathing if he listened closely. "Open up." A voice barked, sharper than before. Daniel walked to the door and unlocked it slowly. The patrol leader from before stepped inside without waiting for permission. Behind him, 3 more officers fanned out. The air in the workshop felt tighter. Instantly, Daniel kept his tone even. "You boys in a hurry?" The leader didn't answer. He just glanced at the shelves. "The tables, the workbench. We've got reports of suspicious activity here," he said. Daniel shrugged. "Suspicious? That's just another word for interesting." The man's lips twitched in irritation. He waved his hand, and the other officers began moving around the room. One started checking behind shelves. Another kicked at a stack of crates. Daniel stayed. But his hands rested casually on the edge of the workbench, close to his tools. "You looking for something specific?" he asked, an unregistered alien female. The leader replied bluntly. Daniel gave him a bored look. "You've been saying that for days," he said. "Maybe you should start checking somewhere else." One of the officers crouched near the corner. Tapping his scanner on the floorboards, Daniel's stomach tightened. The jammer would mask Kara's life signs, but if they pried open the wrong spot, it wouldn't matter. He stepped toward the officer. "Careful with that," Daniel said. "That floor's older than your badge." The officer glanced up with a smirk. "Funny. I didn't take you for someone who cares about old wood." Daniel leaned closer. "I care about my property," he said quietly, "and I'm not above charging you for damage." The officer straightened, muttering something under his breath, and moved to another part of the room. Inside the hidden space, Kara pressed her hand over her mouth. She could hear every bootstep above her. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought it might give her away. One officer wandered toward the back room. Daniel moved quickly, stepping into his path. "Restricted area," he said. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because it's where I keep things. I don't want clumsy hands breaking." Daniel replied, his voice low. The officer hesitated, then turned back to the leader. The leader was already eyeing Daniel with thinly veiled suspicion. "You're hiding something," the leader said. "Everyone's hiding something," Daniel answered. "That's called privacy." The leader stepped closer. "You think you're clever," he said. "But sooner or later, we'll find her." Daniel didn't flinch. "You'll have to." "Try harder," he said. "And when you do, I'll still be here." The search went on for another 20 minutes. They looked under tables, behind machines, even inside a locked cabinet that Daniel reluctantly opened. But they didn't find Kara. Finally, the leader gave a frustrated sigh. "Let's go," he ordered. The officers filed out, one of them giving Daniel a long, suspicious look before stepping into the street. The leader lingered for a moment. At the door, "This isn't over," he said. Daniel gave him a faint smile. "It never is," he replied. The leader's jaw tightened, but he turned and left. Daniel closed the door and locked it, exhaling slowly when the sound of boots faded. Completely, Daniel knelt and pressed the hidden latch. The panel clicked open, and Kara's wide eyes met his. "You can come out now," he said. She crawled up, her hands trembling. "They were so close," she whispered. "Too close." Daniel admitted, Kara's voice shook. "If they keep coming like this, you'll get in trouble." Daniel shook his head. "I'll get in trouble if I stop," he said. Her eyes softened. "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "I know enough," Daniel replied. "I know you don't deserve what they've do to you." That night, the workshop felt different. The danger was no longer a shadow on the street. It had stepped inside. Kara couldn't shake the feeling that next time they might not leave without her. She sat at the workbench while Daniel tinkered with the device. "What are you making?" she asked, something that might make our next meeting with them a little less one-sided. He said. She watched his hands work with careful precision, even with danger pressing in from all sides. He looked calm. Kara realized then that Daniel wasn't just helping her, he was preparing for a fight. And for the first time in years, she felt like someone might actually win one for her. But deep down, both of them knew the patrol wouldn't stop now. They would be back, and next time, they might come in the dead of night. The next 2 days passed in uneasy silence. Kara worked alongside Daniel, but both of them kept glancing at the door every time a noise came from the street. They didn't say it out loud, but they both knew the patrol would return, and this time they might not leave without her. On the third night, just after sunset, Daniel put down his tools and unfolded the map on the workbench. "It's time," he said simply. Kara's brow furrowed. "Time for what?" "For you to get somewhere they can't touch you," he said. She hesitated. "You mean, leave?" Daniel nodded. "The old supply tunnel," he explained. "It's our best shot once you're at the river port. You can get on a cargo vessel heading out of the city." Kara's stomach tightened. "If I leave, I'll never see you again," she said softly. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "That's the point," he said. "If you stay, they'll find you, and I can't let that happen." They prepared in silence. Daniel packed food, water, and a small toolkit into a worn satchel. He handed her a small device no bigger than her palm. "It'll block scanners for about 5 minutes," he explained. "Only use it if they're right on top of you." Kara nodded, clutching it tightly before they could set out. The sound of engines roared outside. Daniel's head shot up. "They're early," he muttered. Kara's eyes widened. "What do we do?" Daniel grabbed the satchel and slung it over her shoulder. "We go now," he said, "through the back." They slipped out into the narrow alley behind the workshop. Shadows swallowed them as they moved quickly toward the old industrial sector. But the echo of boots followed. The patrol was already spreading through the streets. Daniel led her through a maze of side paths, never slowing. The sound of shouts carried through the air. "They're close," Kara whispered. "Keep moving," Daniel said, his voice firm. They reached a rusted gate hidden behind a stack of broken machinery. Daniel yanked it open, revealing a stairwell descending into darkness. "This is it," he said. Kara peered down. "It's so dark," she murmured. Daniel handed her a small flashlight. "Stay close to me," he said. The tunnel was cold and damp. Their footsteps echoed, but the walls muffled the noise from above. Daniel kept glancing back to make sure she was still behind him. Every few minutes, they heard faint clanks from the metal above the patrol, searching the streets above their heads after nearly 10 minutes of walking. Daniel stopped. A heavy metal door blocked the path. He knelt and worked quickly with a small tool. Kara stood watch, clutching the scanner blocker tightly. "Hurry," she whispered. Daniel's hands were steady. "Almost there," he said, suddenly. Voices echoed faintly from the tunnel behind them. Kara's heart leaped. They found the entrance, she said urgently. Daniel cursed under his breath and forced the lock open. The door swung wide, revealing the faint glow of moonlight ahead. "Go," he said. Pushing her forward, they emerged into the abandoned dockyard. The river shimmered under the night sky. A cargo vessel loomed nearby, engines rumbling softly. "That's your way out," Daniel said, pointing. Kara turned. To him, her eyes glistening. You're not coming? He shook his head. They'll follow me if I'm with you. They'll know where you're going. Her voice broke. I don't want to leave you. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. You have to, he said, because you deserve a life without running. The sound of shouts grew louder from the tunnel. Daniel's eyes hardened. Go, he repeated. Kara's hands shook as she stepped back, but before she turned, she reached out and hugged him tightly. For a moment, Daniel didn't move. Then his arms wrapped around her. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. She pulled away, wiping her eyes, and ran toward the ship. Daniel watched until she was safely on the ramp, then turned toward the tunnel entrance. He could see flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. He stepped into their line of sight, drawing their attention away from her. Kara reached the deck of the ship just as the captain shouted for departure. She looked back once and saw Daniel standing tall, blocking the patrol's path. The last thing she saw before the ship pulled away was him turning and vanishing into the shadows, leading them away. Hours later, Kara stood on the deck. The city lights fading into the distance. The river stretched endlessly ahead. She clutched the satchel Daniel had given her. Inside, she found a small folded note. It read, Live free. That's all the thanks I need. Her tears fell silently, but her lips curved into a small, determined smile. Daniel had risked everything, so she could have this chance, and she would honor that by surviving. Somewhere in the city, Daniel was probably still facing the patrol, but in Kara's heart, he wasn't just the man who saved her. He was family, and no matter how far she traveled, she knew the triplets, if she ever had them, would one day call him Dad.